"Mom, please stop. Everyone's watching us." Lily Harding's desperate plea cut through the busy terminal like a knife through silence. But the entitled woman in designer heels wasn't listening. She was too busy demanding that a black man give up his priority seat for her and her daughter. It was a Thursday afternoon at JFK International Airport Terminal 4, Gate B27, the kind of day where flight delays had already tested everyone's patience. The air conditioning struggled against the press of bodies, creating pockets of uncomfortable warmth throughout the terminal. Overpriced coffee from vendor carts did little to mask the tension in the air as passengers checked their phones repeatedly for updates. The 3:45 p.m. flight to Los Angeles had been delayed for the second time, and the priority seating area near the gate was packed with weary business travelers. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, aircraft taxied across the tarmac under gathering storm clouds. Weather reports mentioned possible thunderstorms moving in from the west, another factor contributing to the collective anxiety permeating the terminal. The priority seating area stood as an oasis of relative comfort amid the chaos. Leather seats instead of plastic power outlets at every chair, and a small complimentary refreshment station that was quickly running low. Marcus Jennings had arrived early, as he always did. 25 years of business travel had taught him that the early bird doesn't just get the worm, it gets the seat, the overhead bin space, and the peace of mind. His fingers tapped methodically across his tablet screen as he reviewed tomorrow's presentation. Every few minutes, he rolled his shoulders to release the tension that had settled there during his 3-hour pre-flight preparation session. At 44, Marcus had built his career from the ground up, rising from a junior programmer to senior software architect at a Fortune 500 technology company. The journey was etched in the fine lines around his eyes. In the deliberate way, he arranged his belongings. Nothing left to chance, everything earned through careful planning. Tomorrow wasn't just another meeting. He was flying to Los Angeles to present a revolutionary AI project that had taken his team 3 years to develop. A project that could change the entire industry. A project that had his father's spirit written all over it. Marcus's father had passed away 5 years ago, but his lessons lived on. "Son," he used to say, "dignity isn't about how others treat you. It's about how you carry yourself when they try to break you." Those words had carried Marcus through countless moments of subtle racism, through meetings where he was the only black face in the room, through promotions that took twice as long as they should have. His executive platinum status hadn't been given to him. He'd earned it through hundreds of flights, thousands of hours in the air, and millions of miles traveled for a company that had finally learned to value his brilliance. The woman moved through the crowd like she owned the terminal. Designer sunglasses perched atop perfectly styled blonde hair that had probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. A Louis Vuitton bag slung over one shoulder. Shopping bags from duty-free clutched in her manicured hands. Her stride spoke of someone who had never heard the word no and didn't intend to start now. This was Victoria Harding, though Marcus didn't know her name yet. At 39, she carried herself with the kind of entitled confidence that only comes from never having to earn what you have, or from desperately trying to maintain the appearance of never having lost it. Behind her, being half dragged through the terminal, was her daughter Lily. 10 years old, with long brown hair that hadn't inherited her mother's artificial blonde. Lily moved with the resignation of someone who had been through this before many times. Her eyes darted around the terminal with a mixture of embarrassment and dread. Already sensing what was about to happen, she clutched her phone in one hand, not scrolling through TikTok like most kids her age, but holding it like a lifeline, her father's photo on the lock screen providing silent comfort. What no one in the terminal could see was that beneath Victoria's Prada sunglasses were eyes ringed with exhaustion. Her designer outfit masked a woman in freefall. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, and with it had gone the mansion in Westchester, the summer house in the Hamptons, and most painfully her social standing. Michael Harding had been the one with the money, the connections, the real power. Victoria had been the trophy wife who'd become too heavy to carry. Last night she'd lain awake until 3 a.m., calculating and recalculating her finances. The alimony was generous by normal standards, but paltry compared to the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. The Louis Vuitton bag was from 3 seasons ago. The highlights in her hair were overdue for a touch-up. The credit card in her wallet was dangerously close to its limit, but no one could know that. Especially not Lily, who was being flown first class to Los Angeles to spend the summer with her father, a man who, despite Victoria's best efforts in court, had been granted primary custody. Victoria stopped directly in front of Marcus, her shopping bags rustling as she positioned herself in his line of sight. Her nostrils flared slightly, taking in his presence with an almost predatory assessment. Lily tugged at her mother's designer sleeve, already knowing what was coming, already trying to prevent it. "Mom, there are other seats over there," she whispered, pointing to empty seats just 20 feet away in the general boarding area. Her fingers twisted nervously in the fabric of her mother's blouse. Victoria didn't even glance at her daughter. Her eyes were fixed on Marcus with the kind of laser focus that preceded every one of her confrontations. The slight twitch at the corner of her mouth betrayed the satisfaction she anticipated from the upcoming interaction. Marcus felt the shadow fall across his tablet before he looked up. Years of experience had taught him to recognize the particular quality of silence that preceded these moments. The slight shift in the atmosphere, the subtle tensing of nearby witnesses, the way conversations would suddenly drop to whispers. He didn't need to look up to know what was happening, but he did anyway, removing his earbuds slowly and deliberately. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as he mentally prepared for what was coming. "You're in our seats," Victoria announced. Not a question, not a polite request, a declaration, a command from someone who was used to the world rearranging itself to accommodate her desires. Marcus looked up from his tablet, removing his earbuds slowly and deliberately. He'd been here before. Not this exact situation, but close enough. The woman who clutched her purse tighter when he entered an elevator. The store security that followed him through high-end shops. The surprise on faces when he pulled up to valet parking in his Tesla. He knew this dance. "I'm sorry," Marcus replied, his voice carrying the kind of calm that only comes from years of practice. "This is the priority seating area," Victoria said, her tone dripping with condescension. Each word carefully enunciated, as if she were speaking to someone who couldn't possibly understand complex concepts. "My daughter and I need these seats." Marcus glanced at his boarding pass, then back at Victoria. His movements were measured, peaceful, and non-threatening. He'd learned long ago that any sudden movement, any sign of agitation would be used against him. "I have priority boarding as well," he said evenly. "I've been sitting here for the past 40 minutes. Lily tugged harder at her mother's arm. "Mom, he was here first. We can sit somewhere else, please." Her voice cracked slightly, her words tumbling out in the hurried manner of a child trying to avert disaster. "There's seats right there. Look, right there." "Lily, be quiet," Victoria snapped without looking at her daughter. "Mommy's handling this." The word "mommy" sounded wrong coming from her mouth. Too sweet, too gentle, too at odds with the venom in her voice when she turned back to Marcus. "Look," she said, leaning slightly forward, lowering her voice as if sharing a confidence, though her words remained perfectly audible to everyone nearby. "I don't know how you got that pass, but surely you understand that some people actually belong in this area." Samuel Barrett had been observing the confrontation with increasing discomfort. At 73, the Vietnam veteran had seen this scenario play out countless times over the decades. Only the settings changed, never the underlying prejudice. "Dorothy," he murmured to his wife of 50 years. "I think we need to say something." Dorothy Barrett nodded, setting aside her knitting. In their long marriage, they had developed a rhythm for these moments. Samuel would speak first, and Dorothy would provide the perfect supporting argument, a 1-2 punch honed through years of civil rights activism. "Ma'am," Samuel said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had commanded troops in combat. "That gentleman was here when my wife and I arrived. He kindly helped us with our bags and offered my wife his water when she mentioned being thirsty." Victoria whirled to face him, clearly startled by this unexpected intervention. "This doesn't concern you," she snapped. "When someone is treated unfairly in a public space," Dorothy added, her southern accent tinged with steel beneath the honey. It concerns all of us. That's how justice works. Samuel rose to his feet, his military bearing evident despite his age. Young lady, I fought alongside men of every color in Vietnam. When bullets are flying, nobody cares about skin tone. They care about character. Victoria's eyes flicked nervously between the elderly couple. She hadn't anticipated allies for Marcus, especially not a distinguished-looking white couple in their 70s. You don't understand, Victoria insisted, lowering her voice as if to exclude Marcus from the conversation. My daughter needs to sit by the charging ports. It's for her anxiety. Dorothy's eyebrows rose skeptically as she glanced at Lily, who looked more anxious about her mother's behavior than anything else. That young man has as much right to be here as you do, Samuel stated firmly. More since he was here first. Victoria's face flushed. She hadn't expected to be challenged, especially not by people who looked like they could be her parents. People who, in her worldview, should have automatically sided with her. It's fine. Marcus began, always the peacemaker, despite being the wronged party. I can. No, sir, Samuel interrupted gently. You don't need to move. You were here first, and you have every right to stay. As Victoria opened her mouth to argue further, Dorothy added with grandmotherly sweetness that couldn't quite hide her disapproval. Perhaps your daughter would be less anxious if her mother set a better example of how to treat others. Several nearby passengers murmured in agreement, the collective sentiment shifting visibly against Victoria. Victoria Harding walked stiffly between the two security officers, her designer heels clicking on the terminal floor in a rhythm that seemed to count down the final moments of her carefully constructed facade. The eyes of strangers followed her, some openly recording, others whispering behind hands. 20 feet from the security checkpoint that would take her back to the main terminal, Victoria's legs began to tremble. The adrenaline that had fueled her confrontation was ebbing, leaving behind the cold reality of what had just happened. I need to sit down, Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. The female security officer looked at her with professional concern. Ma'am, there's a seating area just past the checkpoint. No, I need to sit now, Victoria insisted, her breathing becoming shallow and rapid. I think I'm having a panic attack. The security officers exchanged glances, then guided Victoria to a nearby bench. As she sank onto it, her designer handbag slipped from her shoulder and fell to the floor, spilling its contents. Lipstick, wallet, phone, keys, and a small orange prescription bottle rolled across the terminal floor. Victoria stared at the scattered items, making no move to retrieve them. The prescription bottle came to rest against someone's shoe, a polished Oxford belonging to Marcus Jennings, who had followed at a discreet distance, perhaps to ensure that Victoria actually left the gate area. Marcus bent down and gathered the spilled items, placing them back in the handbag, except for the prescription bottle, which he handed directly to Victoria. His eyes briefly scanned the label. Alprazolam, a medication commonly prescribed for anxiety and panic disorders. You dropped these, he said simply, no judgment or mockery in his tone. Victoria looked up at him, her carefully applied makeup now streaked with tears she hadn't realized she was shedding. For a moment their eyes met, hers filled with a complex mixture of humiliation, anger, and something else that might have been the first glimmer of self-awareness. His steady and unexpectedly compassionate. Why are you being nice to me? She asked, her voice cracking. After what I said to you. Then, as quickly as the vulnerability had appeared, Victoria's defenses snapped back into place. She snatched the bottle from his hand. I don't need your pity, she hissed, though the effect was somewhat diminished by her trembling hands. This doesn't change anything. You had no right to humiliate me in front of my daughter. Marcus remained calm. I didn't humiliate you, Ms. Harding. I simply refused to move from a seat I had every right to occupy. You turned everyone against me. Her voice rose, drawing attention from passers-by. You made my daughter think I'm... She stopped, unable to say the word racist aloud, as though not naming it might make it less true. The security officers tensed, ready to intervene, but Marcus raised a hand slightly, indicating he wasn't feeling threatened. Ms. Harding, he said quietly, what your daughter thinks of you isn't something I control. It's something you create through your actions. Every day, in every interaction. Victoria's expression flickered between rage and despair, like a light bulb about to burn out. "You don't know anything about me, about my life, about what I've lost." "You're right," Marcus acknowledged. "I don't know your story. But whatever difficulties you're facing, they don't give you the right to treat others as less than human." Victoria stared at him for a long moment. Then her shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of her. "I've lost everything," she whispered, more to herself than to Marcus. "My marriage, my home, my friends. My daughter hates me. And now the whole internet will know me as that racist woman at the airport." Marcus didn't contradict her or offer false comfort. He simply stood there, allowing her the dignity of her breakdown without adding to her humiliation. "Ms. Harding," he said after a moment, "I don't know you beyond this interaction. I don't know what led you to become the person you are today. But I do know this. Your daughter doesn't hate you. She's disappointed in you. There's a difference." As the aircraft reached cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign dinged off. Lily fidgeted in her first-class seat, clearly wanting to say something to Marcus across the empty middle seat, but unsure how to begin. Marcus noticed her hesitation and offered a gentle opening. "How are you doing, Lily? That was a tough situation back there." Lily's shoulders relaxed slightly. "I'm okay, I guess." She twisted a strand of hair around her finger, a nervous habit she'd developed during her parents' divorce. "I'm sorry about my mom. She wasn't always like this." "When did things change?" Marcus asked, careful not to press too hard. "After Dad left." Lily's answer came quickly, matter-of-factly. "Mom got really mad at everyone, especially Dad's friends who weren't white." She looked down at her hands. "She says mean stuff she never used to say before." Marcus nodded, understanding. Anger often found targets and prejudice offered convenient ones. "Are you mad at her?" Lily asked, suddenly her question direct in the way only children's questions can be. Marcus considered this thoughtfully. "I'm disappointed by her behavior," he said finally. "But I've learned that staying angry at people who treat me badly only hurts me in the long run." Lily nodded sagely. "That's what my therapist says too. That anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick." Her pronunciation of expecting came out as expecting, a reminder of her youth, despite her precocious vocabulary. "You see a therapist?" Marcus asked gently. "Uh-huh. Since the divorce." Lily shrugged as if this were perfectly normal. "I go on Tuesdays. Mom goes on Thursdays, but—" She trailed off. "But what?" "But I don't think she listens to Dr. Robinson." Lily picked at the arm of her seat. "She just tells him what he wants to hear, so she can tell the judge she's going to therapy." The insight was startling from someone so young. Marcus was reminded again of how divorce and family dysfunction often force children to develop emotional intelligence beyond their years. "Do you have kids?" Lily asked, changing the subject with the rapid-fire attention shift typical of her age. "I do." Marcus smiled, pulling out his phone to show her a photo. "This is Zoe. She's 12. Lily's eyes lit up. "She looks nice. I like her braids. Does she like Harry Potter?" "I'm reading the third one now." "She loves Harry Potter," Marcus confirmed. "She dressed up as Hermione for Halloween last year." "I was Hermione too." Lily exclaimed, her earlier distress momentarily forgotten in the excitement of finding this connection. "Dad helped me make the wand and everything." For the next several minutes, the conversation flowed easily between them, shifting from Harry Potter to school subjects to favorite ice cream flavors. Marcus was careful to keep the topics light, giving Lily a much-needed respite from the emotional intensity of the day. As Maria approached with the beverage cart, Lily looked at Marcus with sudden seriousness. "Mr. Jennings." "Yes." "Do you think my mom will ever change? Like really change?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with hope and doubt. Marcus chose his words carefully. "People can change when they want to, Lily. But they have to really want it. They have to be willing to look at themselves honestly even when it hurts." Lily nodded, seeming to accept this complex truth. "That's the hard part for Mom. She doesn't like looking at the hurt stuff." As Maria asked for their drink orders, Marcus was struck by the wisdom in Lily's simple observation. So much of human suffering stemmed from that very reluctance, the avoidance of painful truths that, if faced, might ultimately lead to healing. 8 weeks after the airport incident, Victoria Harding sat stiffly on the edge of a comfortable leather chair in Dr. Robinson's office. The tasteful decor, abstract art, soft lighting, muted colors, was designed to create a sense of calm, but Victoria felt anything but calm. "You seem agitated today," Victoria. Dr. Robinson observed, his voice neutral. At 55, with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perpetually perched on his nose, he projected an air of unflappable steadiness. "I saw him yesterday." Victoria blurted out, her fingers nervously twisting the strap of her purse. No longer Louis Vuitton, but a more modest coach. "At the grocery store." "Him, Marcus Jennings, the man from the airport." Victoria's jaw tightened. He was buying cereal of all things. Just standing there like a normal person. Dr. Robinson tilted his head slightly. "And what did you expect him to be doing?" Victoria flushed. "I don't know. Not shopping at Whole Foods in my neighborhood." "Did you speak to him?" Victoria shook her head rapidly. "God, no. I hid behind the produce section until he left. I couldn't face him." "What were you feeling in that moment?" Dr. Robinson asked. "Shame." The word came out clipped, painful. Absolute crawling shame. "I wanted to disappear." Dr. Robinson nodded, making a brief note. "That's significant, Victoria. 8 weeks ago, you were still insisting you had done nothing wrong." Victoria's gaze dropped to the carpet. "I've watched the video a lot." "The airport video?" She nodded miserably. "It's everywhere. My mother called last week. She saw it on Facebook." A bitter laugh escaped her. She said she was disappointed but not surprised. "That's my mother for you." Dr. Robinson set his notepad aside. "Victoria, we've talked about how your relationship with your mother shaped your sense of worth, how you learned that your value came from external validation, from status, from being seen as better than." "I know." Victoria's voice was barely audible. "In the video, what do you see when you watch yourself now?" Victoria was silent for a long moment. "I see my mother," she finally whispered. "I see her dismissiveness, her entitlement. I see how she treated our housekeeper when I was growing up." Her eyes filled with tears. "And worst of all, I see Lily watching me, learning from me, just like I learned from my mother." "That's a painful realization," Dr. Robinson acknowledged. "I'm going to lose her." "Victoria," said a tremor in her voice. "Michael is filing for full custody. His lawyer sent the papers yesterday. They're using the video as evidence of my continuing pattern of harmful behavior." "And how are you handling that?" Victoria laughed humorlessly. "Well, 3 months ago, I would have hired the most expensive attorney I could find, fabricated some dirt on Michael and fought it with everything I had." She rubbed her temples. "Now I just feel tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of pretending." "What do you want, Victoria?" "Not what you think you should want, or what others expect you to want. What do you want?" The question hung in the air. Victoria had spent so much of her life performing, being the perfect daughter, the trophy wife, the enviable socialite, that the concept of her authentic desires felt almost foreign. "I want," she began hesitantly. "I want to not be this person anymore. I want Lily to be proud of me someday. I want to look in the mirror and not see my mother looking back." Dr. Robinson smiled slightly. Not a smile of amusement, but of recognition. "That's a real answer, Victoria. Perhaps the first completely honest one you've given in our sessions." "So what now?" Victoria asked, suddenly exhausted. "How do I fix this mess?" "You've already started," Dr. Robinson said. "Recognizing the problem is the first step, but I want to be clear. This isn't a quick fix. You're talking about rewiring patterns that were established in childhood and reinforced throughout your life." Victoria nodded, accepting this hard truth. "I'll do the work. For Lily and for yourself," Dr. Robinson added gently. "You deserve healing too, Victoria." For the first time in their sessions, Victoria didn't immediately reject this suggestion. Instead, she sat quietly considering the possibility that she too might be worthy of compassion, even from herself. The tech conference ballroom buzzed with anticipation as Marcus concluded his presentation on the Lilly framework. As the Q&A session began, hands shot up throughout the audience. Marcus called on a woman in the front row. The results are impressive, but implementing these changes often meets resistance from leadership concerned about efficiency or cost. How do you address that pushback? Marcus nodded, appreciating the practical question. Great point. We've found that framing matters. When we present this as an ethics issue alone, we hit roadblocks. When we demonstrate how biased systems alienate customers, expose companies to legal liability, and ultimately underperform in diverse markets, leadership tends to listen. He pointed to a slide showing retention statistics. Companies that implemented Lilly modifications saw customer retention improve by 7.2% among previously underserved demographics. That's not just ethics, it's good business. As Marcus fielded more questions, a man in the back row stood up. James Whitman, Chief Technology Officer of a competing AI firm, had been a vocal skeptic of what he called politically correct programming. "Mr. Jennings," he said, his tone carrying a hint of challenge, "while these adjustments may improve PR and make everyone feel better about themselves, aren't you concerned that they come at the cost of algorithmic efficiency? After all, if certain patterns emerge in the data, isn't the AI simply reflecting reality rather than creating bias?" The room tensed slightly. This was the argument often used to justify maintaining biased systems, that they were merely reflecting reality rather than perpetuating discrimination. Marcus met Whitman's gaze directly. "That's a common misconception, Mr. Whitman. AI doesn't simply reflect reality. It reflects the data we feed it, which is already shaped by existing biases in collection, selection, and interpretation. But surely you're not suggesting we ignore statistical correlations when they exist?" Whitman pressed. "If an algorithm finds that candidates from certain universities consistently outperform others, isn't removing that signal just handicapping the system?" Marcus nodded, acknowledging the challenge. "The question isn't whether correlations exist, Mr. Whitman. The question is whether those correlations represent causation or merely reflect historical inequities. When an algorithm learns that graduates from Howard University are less desirable candidates than those from Dartmouth, it's not discovering some objective truth. It's perpetuating the historical biases of the organizations that generated the training data." Whitman's expression hardened. "So we should just ignore data that doesn't fit our preferred social narrative?" A murmur ran through the audience. The question was designed to paint Marcus as ideologically driven rather than data-focused. "On the contrary," Marcus replied calmly, "we should examine our data more critically, not less." Lilly doesn't ignore data. It contextualizes it. It asks whether patterns reflect merit or opportunity. If a hiring algorithm is trained on data from a company that has historically hired predominantly white men, it will learn that white men are preferable candidates. That's not because they're objectively better workers. It's because the training data itself contains the bias. Whitman wasn't backing down. But implementing these kinds of social justice filters inevitably impacts performance. You're asking companies to sacrifice efficiency for fairness. Marcus clicked to a slide he hadn't planned to show. A comparative analysis of algorithm performance before and after Lilly implementation. "The data disagrees with you, Mr. Whitman. In every implementation we've studied, Lilly-modified systems showed improved accuracy, lower false positive rates, and better customer satisfaction scores. This isn't about choosing between ethics and efficiency. It's about recognizing that truly efficient systems can't be built on biased foundations." He highlighted a specific metric. "Look at this recommendation engine for a major streaming service. After Lilly implementation, viewer engagement increased by 23%. Why? Because the original algorithm was systematically undervaluing content that appealed to certain demographics, limiting the platform's reach." Whitman opened his mouth to argue further, but Marcus continued, his voice still measured but carrying unmistakable conviction. "The most dangerous myth in our industry is that bias is somehow natural or objective because it emerges from data. But data isn't neutral, Mr. Whitman. It's produced by humans with biases collected through biased systems and interpreted through biased frameworks. True technological excellence requires recognizing and addressing those biases, not enshrining them in code. A wave of applause spread through the audience. Even some of Whitman's colleagues were nodding in agreement. Whitman's face flushed slightly. He hadn't expected to be outmaneuvered so thoroughly in public. "We'll have to agree to disagree," he said stiffly, sitting down. "Actually," Marcus replied with a smile that held no malice, "I invite you to test it yourself. Lily's core algorithm is open source. Apply it to your own systems and measure the results. I'm confident the data will speak for itself." The moderator, sensing the tension, quickly called on another audience member. As the Q&A continued, Marcus noticed Whitman in hushed conversation with one of his engineers, gesturing at the performance metrics still displayed on screen. It wasn't a complete victory. Minds like Whitman's rarely changed in an instant. But it was a crack in the armor, a seed of doubt planted. And sometimes that was enough to begin transformation. The beachfront ice cream shop in Santa Monica was crowded with summer tourists, but the two girls had managed to snag a small table near the window. Lily Harding and Zoe Jennings sat across from each other, their faces alight with the particular excitement of new friendship. "You have to try mine," Lily insisted, pushing her cup of mint chocolate chip across the table. "It's like 1,000,000 times better than the one at the mall." Zoe scooped a small bite with her spoon, her expression turning thoughtful as she tasted it. "That is good, but my cookie dough is still better." She pushed her own cup toward Lily. "Trade for a minute." As they swapped ice cream cups, the easy camaraderie between them was evident. The kind of instant connection that sometimes forms between children, unencumbered by the hesitations and calculations of adult relationships. "So you actually got to meet Harry Styles?" Zoe asked, her eyes wide with envy. "For real," Lily nodded enthusiastically. "Dad's law firm represents his record label or something. He got us backstage passes for the concert last month." She pulled out her phone, swiping to a selfie with the pop star. "See? Oh my God!" Zoe gasped, appropriately impressed. "That's insane. Did you like die?" "I would totally die. I almost fainted," Lily admitted with a giggle. "Dad said my face turned the color of a tomato." Their conversation flowed easily from celebrities to school to books punctuated by fits of laughter and dramatic eye rolls, the universal language of preteen girls. At a nearby table, Marcus and Michael watched their daughters with matching expressions of paternal satisfaction. "They've really hit it off," Michael observed, sipping his coffee. "Lily talks about Zoe constantly between visits. It's nice to see her with a friend who gets her situation." Marcus nodded in agreement. Zoe said the same thing. "It's not easy being a child of divorce, especially when there's—" He searched for a delicate phrasing. "When there's drama," Michael supplied with a wry smile. "You can say it. Victoria and I haven't exactly provided Lily with the smoothest co-parenting experience." "How's that going?" Marcus asked carefully. Lily mentioned Victoria's been seeing a therapist. Michael's expression turned thoughtful. "It's better, actually. Not perfect, but better. She's stopped fighting me on every decision. She's showing up on time for visits. She even apologized for some things she said during the divorce." He shook his head slightly, as if still surprised by this development. "The airport incident was a wake-up call, I think." "That's good to hear," Marcus said sincerely. "She asked about you, you know," Michael added. "Wanted to know if you'd been in touch, if you'd mentioned her." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That we've become friends, that our daughters have bonded, but that you haven't said a word against her to me or to Lily." Michael's eyes crinkled slightly. "I think that surprised her, that you haven't been bad-mouthing her to everyone who'll listen." "That wouldn't help anyone," Marcus replied simply. At the girls' table, a burst of laughter drew their attention. Zoe was demonstrating something with exaggerated hand gestures while Lily doubled over in hysterics. "Look at them," Michael said softly, completely unbothered by by the fact that one is black and one is white, that they come from different worlds, different experiences. They just see another girl who likes the same books and the same music. Children haven't learned all our limitations yet, Marcus observed. They haven't internalized all the reasons why they should keep their worlds small and separate. Maybe we should take notes, Michael suggested with a smile, as they watched Lily pull a friendship bracelet from her pocket, a colorful hand-woven band that she ceremoniously tied around Zoe's wrist. Zoe beamed, holding up her arm to admire it, then pulled a small package from her own bag to present to Lily. The simplicity of the exchange, the uncompromised joy of connection without conditions, struck both fathers as a lesson more powerful than any they could explicitly teach. 1 year after the incident at Gate B27, Lily Harding stood outside the door of a family court in Los Angeles, nervously smoothing the skirt of her carefully chosen outfit. At 11 years old, she had grown taller over the past year, but the biggest changes were less visible. A new confidence in her posture, a clearer sense of her own voice, an understanding of her power to effect change. Michael stood beside her, his hand reassuring on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready, Lily Pad. The judge doesn't expect you to speak." "I want to," Lily replied, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Mom's been working really hard. She deserves a chance to show she's changed." Michael's expression betrayed a complex mixture of emotions: pride in his daughter's compassion, lingering skepticism about his ex-wife's transformation, and the protective instinct that made him want to shield Lily from potential disappointment. "Just remember," he said carefully, "people can change, but change takes time. Your mom has made progress, but you're still not sure if it's real." Lily finished for him. "Dad, I know. I'm not stupid." Michael smiled slightly at her directness. "I never thought you were. I just don't want you to get your hopes up too high. Your mom has promised to change before." "This time is different," Lily insisted. She actually apologized. Like really apologized, not just saying sorry so she can get what she wants. The door opened, and a court officer gestured them inside. The hearing room was smaller and less formal than Lily had expected, more like a conference room than the dramatic courtroom she'd seen on television. "Ready?" Michael asked quietly. Lily nodded, then suddenly grabbed his hand. "Dad, what if the judge says no?" The vulnerability in her voice reminded Michael that for all her maturity, she was still just 11, a child hoping for her family to heal. "Then we keep going as we have been," he assured her. "One day at a time. Your mom will still have her supervised visits. You'll still have your weekend stays. Nothing changes except the timeline." Lily took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders in a gesture that reminded Michael uncannily of himself preparing for a difficult court case. "Okay, let's do this." Inside, Victoria was already seated at the table, alongside her attorney and her therapist, Dr. Robinson. The year had changed her visibly. Gone were the designer clothes and carefully maintained appearance that had once been her armor. She wore a simple blouse and slacks, her hair in a natural style without artificial color. "Lily," Victoria's face lit up at the sight of her daughter. She half rose from her chair, but hesitated, respecting the more formal setting. "Hi, Mom." Lily crossed the room to give her mother a quick hug before taking her seat beside her father. Victoria and Michael exchanged cautious nods, not warm, but no longer openly hostile either. It was progress, however modest. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes and silver hair, entered and took her seat at the head of the table. "Good afternoon, everyone. We're here to review the custody arrangement for Lily Harding and consider Ms. Harding's petition for unsupervised visitation rights." She addressed Lily directly. "Young lady, your father tells me you'd like to speak today. That's unusual for someone your age, but given the circumstances, I'm willing to hear what you have to say." Lily stood, smoothing her skirt again nervously. "Thank you, Your Honor. Just speak from the heart," the judge encouraged. "This isn't a formal testimony." Lily nodded gratefully. "A year ago, my mom did something really bad in public." She glanced at Victoria, who maintained eye contact, despite the evident pain of hearing her daughter recount the incident. She was mean to someone because of their skin color. She embarrassed me and herself. Victoria winced but didn't interrupt or try to defend herself. But that's not why we're here today, Lily continued. We're here because my mom has spent a whole year trying to be better. She turned to look directly at Victoria. Mom used to get super mad when things didn't go her way. She used to say mean stuff about people who were different. She made everything about her. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded slightly, acknowledging the truth of her daughter's words. But now she's different, Lily said, turning back to the judge. She doesn't freak out when Dad changes the schedule. She actually asks me about school and listens to the answer. And she's making friends with people she never would have talked to before. The judge nodded encouragingly. Go on. Last month we went to the park and Mom's phone got stolen, Lily recounted. The old mom would have screamed at everyone and called the police and made a huge scene. But she just took a deep breath and said, well, that's disappointing, but it's just a phone. That's when I knew she was really changing. Dr. Robinson nodded slightly from his seat beside Victoria, clearly recognizing this as a significant milestone for his patient. I love my dad and I love living with him. Lily continued, glancing at Michael with a quick smile. But I miss my mom. I think we're ready to have regular visits without someone watching us the whole time. She hesitated, then added with the disarming honesty of a child. Mom's not perfect. She still says the wrong thing sometimes. But she's trying really, really hard. And I think trying counts for something, right? The judge smiled. Yes, Lily. Trying absolutely counts for something. She turned to Dr. Robinson. Doctor, in your professional opinion, has Ms. Harding made sufficient progress to warrant unsupervised visitation? Dr. Robinson leaned forward. Ms. Harding has demonstrated consistent engagement with therapy for the past year. She's developed significantly improved impulse control and emotional regulation skills. Most importantly, she's shown genuine insight into the harmful patterns of behavior that led to the incident at the airport. He gestured to a thick file before him. I've documented specific instances where Ms. Harding has faced triggering situations, similar to those that would have provoked inappropriate responses in the past, and has successfully implemented the coping strategies we've worked on in therapy. The judge turned to Michael. Mr. Harding, as the custodial parent, what is your position on this petition? Michael took a moment to organize his thoughts. Your Honor, Victoria and I have had our differences. The end of our marriage was difficult. He glanced at his ex-wife. But over the past year, I've seen genuine change. Our co-parenting communications have improved dramatically. She respects boundaries now. Most importantly, Lily comes back from visits happy and relaxed, not stressed and walking on eggshells like before. He took a deep breath. I support a gradual transition to unsupervised visitation with check-ins to ensure things continue to go well. The judge nodded, making notes. Ms. Harding, would you like to add anything? Victoria straightened in her chair. Only that I'm grateful for this opportunity. Your Honor, I know I haven't earned anyone's trust yet. Not Lily's, not Michael's, and certainly not the court's. All I can say is that I'm committed to continuing this work, not just to regain visitation rights, but because I want to be the mother my daughter deserves. After a brief deliberation, the judge announced her decision. I am modifying the custody arrangement to allow unsupervised visitation, gradually increasing over the next 6 months, with regular check-ins. If all continues to go well, we'll revisit the possibility of partial custody at that time. As they left the courtroom, the unexpected happened. Victoria turned to Michael and said simply, "Thank you for supporting this. I know you didn't have to." Michael nodded, acknowledging the rare moment of genuine gratitude from his ex-wife. "Just keep doing the work, Victoria, for Lily's sake. And for mine," Victoria added quietly. "I'm learning that matters too." 6 months after the custody hearing, Marcus Jennings stepped into the gleaming headquarters of Horizon Hospitality Group for his meeting with CEO Dr. Aisha Carter. The Lily Framework implementation had been a resounding success, dramatically reducing bias in the company's customer service systems and increasing guest satisfaction scores across all demographics. As he waited in the elegant reception area, a familiar figure emerged from the elevator. Captain Alejandro Rivera, dressed not in his pilot's uniform, but in a tailored business suit. "Mr. Jennings," the former pilot exclaimed, extending his hand. "What a wonderful surprise." Marcus shook his hand warmly. "Captain Rivera, this is unexpected. What brings you to Horizon?" Rivera smiled. "I've been meaning to contact you, actually. I've taken on a new role, Vice President of Ethical Customer Experience here at Horizon. Dr. Carter recruited me 3 months ago." "You left flying?" Marcus asked, surprised. Piloting had seemed so integral to Rivera's identity during their airport encounter. After 30 years in the cockpit, it was time for a new challenge, Rivera explained. The Lilly Protocol's success caught Dr. Carter's attention. She wanted someone to implement similar principles across Horizon's global properties and, he spread his hands modestly, "Here I am." "That's fantastic," Marcus said sincerely. "But I'm curious. What made you leave a career you clearly loved?" Rivera's expression turned thoughtful. "You know, after what happened that day at JFK, something shifted for me. I realized I could either spend the rest of my career addressing these incidents one flight at a time, or I could help change the systems that allow them to happen in the first place." He gestured around the lobby. "Here I can influence how thousands of employees interact with millions of guests. I can help create environments where dignity isn't just protected when violations occur, but actively fostered as a core value." "That's no small undertaking," Marcus observed. "Neither is your work," Rivera countered. "Which is why I've been advocating for full implementation of the Lilly framework across all our digital platforms. The preliminary results have been impressive." Before they could continue, Dr. Carter's assistant approached to escort Marcus to his meeting. As they parted, Rivera added, "By the way, I met Samuel and Dorothy Barrett last month at a veterans event. They asked about you." The couple from the flight, Marcus was surprised they remembered him. Rivera nodded. "They've become quite the advocates. Samuel started a program at his retirement community, Seniors Against Silence. They teach workshops on how to intervene safely when witnessing discrimination." Marcus shook his head in wonder. "All from one incident at an airport gate. That's how change happens," Rivera replied. "Not always from grand gestures or sweeping policies, but from ordinary moments when people choose dignity over convenience, courage over comfort." As Marcus headed to his meeting, he reflected on the unexpected ripples that had spread from that confrontation a year and a half ago. Lily and Victoria's healing journey, his friendship with Michael Zoe and Lily's bond, and now Rivera's career change and the Barrett's activism. What had begun as yet another painful experience of discrimination had somehow catalyzed transformation in ways no one could have predicted. It was a reminder that even in moments of ugliness, seeds of change were being planted. If only there were people brave enough to nurture them. The story of what happened at Gate B27 became a case study in business schools and diversity training programs across the country. Not because it was particularly unique. Similar incidents occurred daily in airport stores and public spaces throughout America. But because of what happened afterward, the Lilly Protocol, first implemented by Skylight Airlines and later adopted by 8 other major carriers, established clear guidelines for addressing discriminatory behavior in air travel. Rather than treating racism as a customer service issue to be managed with apologies and vouchers, it recognized discrimination as a safety and dignity concern, requiring direct intervention. In its first year of implementation, reported incidents of discrimination decreased by 23% across participating airlines. One notable example occurred on a Skylight flight from Atlanta to Seattle, where a passenger made repeated derogatory comments about a flight attendant's accent. The captain, citing the Lilly Protocol, gave the passenger a clear warning. When the behavior continued, the passenger was removed from the flight before takeoff. The incident was captured on video and widely shared, reinforcing the message that discriminatory behavior would no longer be tolerated. Flight attendant Sophia Mendez, the target of the comments, later told industry publication Aviation Today before the Lilly Protocol, "I would have been expected to smile through the abuse to avoid a customer complaint. Now I know the company has my back when I'm treated with disrespect." Not everyone embraced these changes. Industry analyst James Parker wrote a scathing op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, criticizing what he called the overcorrection of American airlines. He argued that empowering crew members to make subjective judgments about passenger behavior risks, alienating paying customers, and opens airlines to litigation. Captain Rivera responded in a widely shared LinkedIn post. The critics of the Lilly Protocol assume that discriminatory behavior is a matter of opinion rather than observable fact. They also ignore that passengers who don't engage in harassment and abuse, the vast majority, report feeling safer and more comfortable under these policies. The public response was overwhelmingly positive. When United Airlines announced their adoption of a similar protocol, their customer satisfaction ratings increased by 12% among minority passengers, without any measurable decrease among other demographics. Delta and American soon followed suit, creating an industry standard that transformed air travel for both passengers and crew members. Beyond the airlines, the ripple effect continued. A community organization in Atlanta launched Terminal Dignity, training volunteers to safely intervene when witnessing discrimination in public spaces. Their methods, based directly on what had happened at Gate B27, emphasized calm intervention, community support, and focusing on the dignity of the targeted individual rather than confrontation with the aggressor. The Lilly framework, developed by Marcus Jennings, was being implemented in AI systems across multiple industries, from hospitality to healthcare, from financial services to content moderation. By identifying and addressing subtle patterns of bias in automated systems, it was quietly changing the digital landscape to be more equitable and just. At Riverside Medical Center in Chicago, the Lilly framework identified that their patient scheduling algorithm was consistently assigning shorter appointment times to patients from predominantly Black and Hispanic neighborhoods based on historical patterns that reflected provider bias rather than medical necessity. After Lilly recommended modifications, appointment allocation became more equitable, and patient satisfaction scores rose across all demographics. In Seattle, the public library system used Lilly to analyze their book recommendation algorithm, discovering it was systematically underrepresenting authors of color in certain genres. After implementation of Lilly modifications, reader engagement increased by 17%, with particularly significant gains among younger readers who were exposed to more diverse authors. But perhaps the most meaningful impact was less visible, unfolding in individual lives transformed by that day's events. Victoria Harding continued her therapy, working through the deep-seated insecurities and prejudices that had driven her behavior. Her volunteer work at the community center evolved into a part-time position coordinating resources for families in need. Not that her transformation was without setbacks. During a particularly stressful week, she snapped at a checkout clerk who was struggling with English, falling back into old patterns of impatience and entitlement. The difference was what happened afterward. Instead of justifying her behavior, she recognized it, apologized sincerely, and discussed the incident with her therapist to better understand her triggers. "Recovery isn't linear," she explained to Lilly during one of their now regular dinner conversations. "I still mess up sometimes. The difference is now I can catch myself, and I actually care about the impact I have on others." Lilly Harding won her student council election in a landslide. Her anti-bullying initiative was adopted not just by her middle school, but by the entire district, earning recognition from the state education board. At 12 years old, she had already discovered her voice and her purpose, advocating for those who couldn't speak for themselves. When a local news station interviewed her about the program, the reporter asked what had inspired her activism. Lilly hesitated only briefly before answering truthfully. "Last year, I saw my mom hurt someone with her words and actions. It made me realize how much damage we can do when we don't see other people as fully human. But I also saw how people can change when they're willing to face their mistakes. That's what our anti-bullying program is about. Not just stopping bad behavior, but helping people become better." The honest answer earned her mother's tearful gratitude later that evening. "You could have lied," Victoria said. "You could have protected me." "I'm not ashamed of you, Mom," Lily replied with the directness of youth. "I'm proud of how hard you're trying to change." Samuel and Dorothy Barrett became unexpected activists in their retirement community, launching Seniors Against Silence, a program teaching older adults how to safely intervene when witnessing discrimination. Their workshops, which emphasized using the authority that came with age and the safety of numbers, had trained over 200 seniors in the Los Angeles area. "In our day, we were taught not to make waves," Samuel explained to a community newspaper. "But we've lived long enough to see where silence leads. It's never too late to stand up for what's right." And Marcus Jennings. He continued his work developing technologies that reduced bias and increased equity. The Lilly framework's success had elevated his professional standing, but he measured his achievement in a different metric: the emails, letters, and messages from people whose lives had been improved, whose dignity had been protected, whose humanity had been more fully recognized because of his work. One evening, as the two families, the Jennings and the Hardings, gathered for a barbecue in Michael's backyard, Marcus watched as Zoe and Lily choreographed an elaborate TikTok dance, their movements synchronized with the easy coordination of best friends. Dorothy and Samuel Barrett had joined them as well, having become something like honorary grandparents to both girls. Dorothy was teaching Amara her secret recipe for peach cobbler, while Samuel regaled Michael with stories from his military days. Who would have thought, a voice said beside him. Marcus turned to find Victoria holding a glass of lemonade and observing the gathering with a mixture of wonder and gratitude. "A year and a half ago, I was at my absolute worst," she continued quietly. "I hurt people. I embarrassed my daughter. I embodied everything wrong with privilege and entitlement." Marcus didn't contradict her or offer false absolution. The acknowledgement of her past behavior was part of her healing. And yet somehow, from that awful moment, came all of this. Victoria gestured to the joyful gathering. Lily found a best friend. Michael found a buddy who understands single fatherhood. I found... She paused, searching for the right words. "I found a path back to myself. The self I was before status and appearance became my whole identity." Marcus considered her words. "Sometimes it takes our worst moments to show us what matters most." Victoria nodded. "I won't pretend I've figured it all out. I still catch myself making assumptions, judging people based on superficial things. But now I notice it. Now I can choose differently." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the gathering, Captain Rivera arrived, the final guest fresh from a meeting with the Horizon Hospitality Board. He was greeted with hugs from the girls and handshakes from the adults, his integration into their unlikely community complete. Later, as everyone gathered around the table laden with food, Michael raised his glass in a toast. "To unexpected connections," he said, looking around at the diverse faces that had somehow become a chosen family. "To second chances," Victoria added softly. "To dignity," Marcus concluded, meeting Captain Rivera's knowing gaze across the table. It was a simple moment, unremarkable to anyone who didn't know their history, but profound to those who understood the journey that had brought them to this table. A journey that had begun with ugliness, but transformed through courage and compassion and the willingness to grow into something beautiful and genuine. The story wasn't just about one woman's meltdown, or one man's dignity, or one pilot's decision. It was about the community that formed in response. The witnesses who spoke up, the child who told the truth, the professionals who took a stand. And that perhaps was the most powerful legacy of all. The reminder that change happened when ordinary people in ordinary moments made the extraordinary choice to stand up for what was right. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories of dignity, courage, and transformation to the world. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that standing up for what's right matters, and that even our most difficult moments can become catalysts for positive change. Remember, in a world where you can be anything, be the one who chooses dignity over convenience, courage over comfort. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.